Notre Dame is coming off the biggest win of the Marcus Freeman era, but now the question is, can the Irish avoid a letdown against Northern Illinois? We break it down next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Irish. My name is Tyler Wojciak and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and I'm thrilled to have you here on Wednesday, September 4th, and thanks for starting your day right here by making this your first listen of the day. As always, this show is free and available wherever you get your podcast, plus you can watch the full episode on YouTube as well. Remember to like and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, or if you're listening to the pod, please rate the show 5 stars, maybe even leave a review if you're feeling extra generous, and of course, subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, the time has come to shift our attention from Texas A&M to Northern Illinois. The Irish kick off their home slate for the 2024 campaign on Saturday against the Northern Illinois Huskies. So today I am going to preview the matchup, break down the matchups in all 3 phases of the game, and share my keys to the game. Then I'll get to my official predictions at the end, but here's what you need to know about this game. So kickoff is slated for 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and this is the very first matchup between these two schools. The game is going to air on NBC, and it is the first time that Notre Dame will have this new broadcasting crew, or at least partially new, because Dan Hicks is going to make his return to the Notre Dame booth as the play-by-play guy, and everyone's favorite color commentator, Jason Garrett, is going to return for his 3rd season. Obviously, I say that a little sarcastically, but right now, the weather forecast looks pretty good. 33% chance of rain in the morning, but then it should clear up, and it looks like it's going to be a little bit cooler than a normal home opener, but should be sunny in the afternoon. And right now, Notre Dame is favored by 28.5 points on FanDuel. The over-under sits at 45.5, so basically Vegas is predicting Notre Dame to win by a score close to 37-9, and the Huskies are led by head coach Thomas Hammock, who is entering his 6th season, leading his alma mater. He's got a 25-33 record overall, but they did finish 7-6 last season, and they finished 9-5 back in 2021. My big takeaway about this game, before I get to the scouting report, the keys to the game, all that, is that I'm nervous. I am. I don't feel great about this game. And this really doesn't have anything to do with Northern Illinois' roster, although they do have some good players, which I'm going to get to. But this has everything to do with the fact that Notre Dame is coming off a huge road win in the season opener. Historically, Notre Dame has not performed well in these situations when they play a weaker opponent in week 2, coming off a big-time game in the season opener. Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated did a great write-up about this on their site. I'm looking forward to talking about this more in depth with him tomorrow, so spoiler alert, Tim O'Malley is going to be on the show tomorrow. Great guest. You're going to want to be in for that. But he went through it. What Notre Dame has done in the season opener and then week 2 when they've had this opportunity, right, when they're playing a big game and then an inferior opponent the following week. So in 2022, Notre Dame lost a close game on the road to the 4th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes in Marcus Freeman's head coaching debut. It was a close game. Notre Dame led in the 4th quarter. They ultimately lost 21-10. And then I think you know what happened the following week. Notre Dame lost to Marshall 26-21 at home. The honeymoon was over. It was an absolute dumpster fire on the Notre Dame football program. And Marcus Freeman even said they went a little bit too hard getting ready for that Ohio State game. They were not prepared to play against Marshall, and it cost them. They lost that game. 2021, Notre Dame beat Florida State on the road on a game-winning field goal in overtime. And even though Florida State wasn't ranked, it was a difficult environment to play in. Notre Dame was ranked at the time. It was a big game. And then the following week, Notre Dame needed a game-winning touchdown drive led by Jack Cohn, who literally dislocated his finger on the drive to beat Toledo. I think his name was DeQuan Finn, the quarterback of Toledo. If he went down, instead of scoring a touchdown there at the end, they could have ran out the clock, kicked a game-winning field goal, and beaten Notre Dame. Just think about how different Notre Dame football would be if that actually happened. But it didn't. 2018, Notre Dame knocked off the 14th-ranked Michigan Wolverines in the season opener at home, 24-17. Great game, huge win for the program. But then they almost lost to Ball State the following week. They did win 24-16, and they needed Drew Tranquill to recover an onside kick there at the end. That was an absolutely abysmal display of offense in that game. That was one of the grossest games I can ever remember watching Notre Dame play. 2016, Notre Dame lost to Texas in the opener, but then they managed to beat Nevada handedly the following week. So this is the outlier. Technically, if I really wanted to, I could have stopped after 2018 and my argument would have been already made. But you know what? We're not going to do that. We are going to point out all the outcomes in this scenario. 2015, though, you go back to when Notre Dame dominated Texas 38-3 in the year opener. And granted, Texas wasn't even ranked, but still, it's Texas, and it was a very big game. Then Notre Dame needed a game-winning touchdown pass in the final seconds to beat Virginia the following week. They ended up winning that game by a touchdown. And yeah, I understand the starting quarterback, Malik Zaire, got hurt in that game, but they were down 14-12 at halftime with Malik Zaire in that game. So this is a trend, and it's been going on for the past decade. And Northern Illinois certainly looks like a team that could pose problems if the Irish don't come ready to play. Human nature is undefeated, as they say, and it is human nature for guys, especially young college athletes, to take their foot off the gas a little bit after they play in such a big, meaningful game that required so much out of them, both physically and mentally, and that's exactly what's happening to Notre Dame here, coming off a very hard-fought win on the road against Texas A&M. If this team does not prepare the right way, I could see this being a close game in the second half. I am not predicting Notre Dame to lose. I don't think they're ever going to be in danger or in legitimate danger of losing this game, but I would not be surprised at all if this is an ugly start and it's a close game going into the halftime. Let me make this clear. If Notre Dame prepares the right way and they come out ready to go, they will dominate this team. That's what they should do. The question is, will the players prepare the right way? And are they going to be locked in and ready to go on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern? History suggests that they might not be, and Northern Illinois has enough good players to at least compete against Notre Dame's roster. As Marcus Freeman pointed out in his press conference, they returned 18 starters from last season. This team is no stranger to playing Power 5 opponents. They do it every single year. Last year, they actually upset Boston College in the season opener. They ended up getting dominated by Nebraska a couple weeks later, but every year they challenge themselves and they play some Power 5 teams. This is their Super Bowl. The players at Northern Illinois are going to tell their grandkids about the opportunity that they had to play in Notre Dame Stadium. And this program has played in big environments before. They went and they played at Nebraska, at Ohio State, and at Michigan. So for Notre Dame, this is nothing compared to what they just went through and what they hope to achieve this season. Whereas on that other sideline, they are going to be ready to go for this game. And I have no doubt that the Notre Dame coaching staff has been preaching to the players all week that they need to be focused, they can't let up, and they need to prepare. But at the end of the day, the coaches can only do so much. It is on the players to deliver in practice, in the film room, in meetings, and every aspect of their preparation leading up to this game. Coaches can only do so much, and games like this are all about finishing drives. If you do not finish, you could find yourself in the same situation that Oregon found itself in against Idaho in their season opener. With 9:45 left in the fourth quarter, the Oregon Ducks, who are some people's preseason pick to win the national championship, they were only up 17-14 on Idaho. Okay? They ended up winning the game 24-14, and they outgained Idaho 487-217 in total yards, but it was a close game because Oregon did not finish their drives. They clearly did not take Idaho very seriously, and Idaho hit them with a couple trick plays for touchdowns. I definitely anticipate some trick plays from Northern Illinois in this game because they are not going to be able to move the ball consistently on this defense by running their normal offense, but there is a chance that this team could compete with Notre Dame if Notre Dame does not come out ready to go. Those are my concerns about this game. There's a chance I end up being dead wrong about all of this. Notre Dame could come out ready to roll, and they could end up dominating this team, and then my comment section is going to blow up. They're going to be like, you're an idiot for ever thinking that Northern Illinois had a chance in this game, and honestly, I hope you're right. If Notre Dame does that, I will be thoroughly impressed because that shows that this is a player-led team, and player-led teams often have the most success. Like I said, the coaches are going to be preaching all this stuff to the players all week, but it's on the players to actually prepare the right way. And player-led teams really, especially lately. Just look at what Michigan did last year. Like, yes, Jim Harbaugh is a great coach, as much as it pains me to admit it. And obviously, Harbaugh was a huge part in them winning the national championship. But he wasn't even on the sideline for 6 games during last season, including 3 of their most important ones last year to close out the regular season, including Penn State and Ohio State. But it didn't matter because they had such a veteran group. The players were ready to go. They prepared the right way, and they didn't let their lack of a coach affect them. Notre Dame has a veteran defense, and they do have some veteran transfers on offense, and it's going to be their responsibility to make sure that this team prepares the right way all week long and come out and ready to dominate their opponent. That is what they should do. But will they? We're going to find out on Saturday. Coming up next, I'm going to break down Northern Illinois' personnel and explain why Notre Dame has such a big advantage in all 3 phases if they play to their full potential. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Recently, I had to use eBay Motors because I had to fix a headlight. I looked around, went to some different mechanics around me, didn't really like any of the prices that I was hearing. Then I was like, wait a second, what am I doing? I went on ebaymotors.com/motors, and then I found a perfect headlight for a cheap cost, and it was the right way to go. And you can keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, let's break down the matchups here between Notre Dame and Northern Illinois. We're going to start when Notre Dame has the ball and look at Notre Dame's offense versus NIU's defense. So Nick Benedetto is their defensive coordinator. And last year, they had a pretty solid defense. They finished tied for 27th in the country in scoring defense, and they allowed just 21 points per game. They also finished 39th in the country in points per drive. Their best player on their D-line is their senior edge rusher, number 4, Rasheen Thomas, but he missed last week's game with an injury, and I expect he will be out for this game as well. That is a big loss. He led the team in tackles last season, so that is a big advantage for Notre Dame. But they have a couple other good players on their front seven that you should keep an eye out for. Number 8, Devontae O'Malley. He is a senior defensive tackle, first team All-MAC in the preseason, according to some of the preseason watch lists and things like that. They also have a pretty good senior linebacker, number 26, Jaden Dolphin. Great name, by the way. He was second on the team in tackles last year. All-MAC preseason watch list as well. Christian Furman is a transfer who put up big numbers at his previous school, Southeast Missouri State. They also bring back a ton of experience in their secondary, and they were very good against the pass last season. So Northern Illinois finished 6th in the country in pass yards allowed per game, and they bring back both of their starting safeties, as well as quarterback Javon Bird and their nickel, Jayshawn Profete. So Jayshawn led the team with 8 passes deflected last year, but he did not come down with an interception. Javon Bird, he led their team in interceptions with 3, and he also had 5 pass breakups. So these guys are old. They played a ton of football. They were productive when they played against teams who were at their level last season. But then again, Notre Dame's wide receivers should be able to move the ball on these guys, but I don't think that this secondary is going to be one that just has big-time coverage busts, or they're going to find themselves where they don't know where they need to be. They're not going to beat themselves. So my keys for the Notre Dame offense in this game is they have to run the ball effectively. Northern Illinois was mediocre to below average at stopping the run last year. They finished 69th, in rush yards allowed per game last season, and 73rd in yards per carry allowed at 4.3. We know that Notre Dame has the horses in the backfield to run the ball. We're going to see a heavy dose of Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price. I also think you're going to see some freshmen, Aeneas Williams and Keatron Young, get their first game action because they were not a part of the offense against Texas A&M. And Dylan McCullough, the running backs coach, made that pretty clear that was going to be the case in the preseason when he said you don't want to commit coaching malpractice and throw your true freshman out there in that kind of environment. So he didn't. But we also know that Dylan McCullough loves to rotate his guys, so I do expect the freshman to get some touches in this game. That'll be something to keep an eye out for. And Notre Dame can't rely on the big play either. They did a little bit in the Texas A&M game, especially on the ground. They had way too many negative run plays, 7 tackles for loss allowed to the Aggies, but they broke off those few big runs. So in the end, it didn't really matter, but I expect to see a more consistent game on the ground for this Notre Dame rushing attack. I also think another key to the game for this offense is don't force the downfield passing game if you don't have to. Yes, Notre Dame's wide receivers are better than the players on NIU, but they're going to win some reps. Like I said, they're old, they're experienced, they played a lot of football, and I don't really expect Notre Dame to push the ball downfield a ton, given the fact that they're still developing on the offensive line. Riley Leonard got rid of the ball in 2.18 seconds on average against Texas A&M, according to Pete Sampson of The Athletic. I think we're going to see more of the same in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if they take some more shots because you got to do it at some point, and it is Northern Illinois. So I do think that they're going to push the ball downfield a little bit, but I hope that they don't do what they did against Marshall in 2022 because if you remember, Notre Dame played a very conservative offensive game against Ohio State, and they really tried to chuck it deep against Marshall. They threw a bunch of passes downfield, and it did not work out. Tyler Buchner went 1 of 7 passing, past 20 yards against Marshall. They really tried to force it. It didn't work. And now, obviously, Riley Leonard is a better quarterback than Tyler Buchner, and the wide receiving core on this year's team is much better than the receiving core in 2022, and they can still be effective moving the ball downfield without having to force it. I don't think they're going to, but I hope they don't try to make a statement and say, oh, well, just because we didn't throw the ball downfield a lot in the opener doesn't mean we can't do it, and try doing it a bunch. Keep it reasonable. Throw it to your wide receivers out in space. Get that screen game going. Notre Dame ran the screens pretty effectively against Texas A&M. I think they're going to rely on that against Northern Illinois as well. Also, pretty simple one, third key for the Irish offense. Don't beat yourself. Just cut down on the penalties, please. I talked a lot about it with Luke Smith yesterday in yesterday's show. That applies to the defense as well. But seriously, cut down on the penalties, please. All right, now let's take a look at Northern Illinois' offense going up against Notre Dame's defense. So Northern Illinois did put up over 700 yards of total offense against Western Illinois. But if you listened to yesterday's show, you know that Western Illinois is the worst team, maybe ever, honestly. I know that might seem hyperbolic, but they are legitimately awful. Go look at their track record. 0-1, obviously, this season. They finished 0-11 last season in the FCS, and they lost every single game by multiple touchdowns. 3 touchdowns was their smallest margin of defeat last year. So this team is terrible. I am not impressed by Northern Illinois' 700 yards of offense against that team. Ethan Hampton won their quarterback battle. He played perfectly, I guess, against Western Illinois. But again, that's like playing a high school JV team. He came into the season with 9 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. I think Notre Dame is going to get a couple interceptions off him because he actually did have 1 pick in that last game. Their best player on offense is number 1, their running back, Ontario Brown. He's a senior. He rushed for nearly 1,300 yards last season and 10 touchdowns. First team All-MAC last year. They also have an Iowa transfer at running back named Gavin Williams. He's a decent player. Can also go out there, help you out in the passing game as well. Out wide, there's really just one wide receiver to keep an eye on. He's number 3, Trayvon Rudolph. He led the Huskies in receiving last season with 51 catches, 531 yards, but just 2 touchdowns. They've got a decent tight end, 81, Grayson Barnes. He led the team in receiving touchdowns with 5. Now, their offensive line is really interesting because they lost their best player, their center. He transferred to Louisville, and they had a tackle who finished first team All-MAC last year who graduated. But they bring back 3 starters from last year, plus a guy who started every game in 2022. He just missed most of last season, and these guys have a ton of experience. They have 3 different players who have played over 2,000 snaps in their careers, according to Jamie Uyeyama from Irish Sports Daily. My keys to the Notre Dame defense, show up. I mean, I know I'm joking a little bit there, but honestly, just show up and you should be able to dominate this offense. Notre Dame is one of the best defenses in the country. Al Golden is going to prepare the same way he does for Northern Illinois that he does for every other team on the schedule. He's going to make life hell on the opposing offense. But specifically, Notre Dame needs to dominate the line of scrimmage and sell out to stop the run. They have a good running back. They have a veteran offensive line, but Notre Dame's front 7 should still get the better of them because they are bigger, they're more athletic, and they're just better at football. Northern Illinois' wide receivers are not going to get open on Notre Dame's secondary. It's just not going to happen. So they are going to confuse them in the passing game. But the only way that Northern Illinois could have any semblance of success on offense is if they get the run game going. If Notre Dame is able to stop that, they should be fine. My last key for the Irish defense, watch out for trick plays. Seriously, watch out for trick plays on every single play. They need to stay disciplined. I already mentioned what Idaho did against Oregon. That is how they put points on the board. And teams are going to run trick plays in games like this when they are clearly overmatched. And Notre Dame has to stay disciplined and not fall into that trap. Remember that Wake Forest game last year? They got Notre Dame's defense a few times in trick plays. I think it was all in one drive. And they went down the field and scored. So Notre Dame needs to learn from that. They cannot allow trick plays to kill them in this game, especially if their offense is struggling a little bit early on, which I think is definitely a possibility. But Notre Dame's defense should absolutely dominate this Northern Illinois offense. I think they will. But if you shut down the running game and you prevent trick plays, they are going to pitch a shutout. It's just a matter of staying disciplined and making sure that doesn't happen. Okay, coming up next, we're going to take a quick look at the special teams matchup, and then I'll share my predictions for the game. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You have heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. But right now, we have something a little bit different for you. So now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. I honestly cannot recommend this enough. I've had YouTube TV for years, and it's great, affordable, and this Sunday Ticket option makes it even better. Like, what's better than watching your favorite team play every single Sunday? The ability to tune into every other game to check in on your fantasy to make sure that you're winning in fantasy and your favorite team is winning as well. Football season is so close. I'm so excited. And FanDuel allows you to get in on the action like never before. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Did you come here for a comprehensive breakdown of Northern Illinois special teams? Probably not. So I'm going to make this brief, but we still got to cover it because as we know on this podcast, special teams is a third of the game. And when I look at NIU special teams, I will say that it is not a strength of this team. Cannon Woodle is their kicker. I think that's how you say it. He was 11 of 17 on field goal attempts last season, 9 of 12 from within 40 yards, which is still not that great, but he was 2 of 5 from 40 plus, so this guy does not really have a great leg. He also missed an extra point in the season opener. Tom Foley is their punter. He had a weak punt of 32 yards in the opener. He only averaged 40 yards per attempt last season, so Notre Dame is definitely going to have the advantage in the kicking game. Dean Partridge is their returner. He actually did take a punt return back to the house last season, so I guess he is capable, but I am not worried about him doing that against Notre Dame. I feel very good about Notre Dame's special teams unit, especially after the season opener. I mean, shout out to Money Mitch, man. When he committed to Notre Dame in the transfer portal, I felt like that was a huge get, and then there were some concerns about him in the offseason, like he wasn't being very consistent in practice, and I was like, that feels odd because he's only missed 2 field goal attempts in his career in games, and then he showed you why Notre Dame went out and got him when he went 3 for 3 against Texas A&M. That was awesome. He was a very, very critical component of Notre Dame's win. I also expect James Rundell, the Aussie punter, to have a little bit of a bounce-back game as he gets more comfortable being the punter for this team in American football. I think we might get a boot in this game. We're like, oh my God, what was that? I also hope that we finally get one of those muff punts because Texas A&M was probably ready for it. I don't know if Northern Illinois guys are going to be ready for that weird punt action coming from James Rundell. So going to just get ahead of myself here on the predictions. I think that Northern Illinois muffs a punt and Notre Dame recovers it. Anyway, back to the special teams before we get to the rest of the predictions. Notre Dame only had one chance to return a kick against Texas A&M. They almost took it to the house. I know it doesn't look like that because Jane Harrison ended up getting tackled pretty quickly, but I noticed it on the rewatch. Someone missed a kickout block, but if he had blocked it correctly, Harrison might have been gone. So another prediction I have, maybe not for this game, but for the season, Jane Harrison is absolutely going to return 2 kickoff returns for a touchdown. I could have just said 1. That probably would have been the safe play. I mean, he was an All-American last year at Marshall at returning kicks. I think he's going to get 2 this season. I honestly believe it. I have trust in Marty Biaggi to get it done. I mean, Jadarian Price got 1 last season, so why can't Harrison get 2? Okay, prediction time. So I like Notre Dame to win, but not to cover. I'm predicting a final score of 27-6. And I know some people are going to give me crap for picking such a low-scoring game. That's not really that great, 27-6. Only 3 touchdowns against Northern Illinois. It's a MAC team. But until Notre Dame proves that they can avoid a letdown, particularly under Marcus Freeman, I am going to assume it will happen to some degree. Northern Illinois is not ever going to have a chance of winning this game, and I don't think they are going to move the ball at all on this defense. It's just not possible, but I just don't think that Notre Dame is going to fix all of their issues on offense in one game. I just don't see that happening. I really hope that Notre Dame doesn't run Riley Leonard at all because he took some shots against A&M, and they need to protect him at all costs going forward. So that is one positive aspect of their offense that I think they're going to shy away from. They are going to lean on their running backs. They're going to work the ball to the wide receivers, and they're going to make some plays, no doubt. But I expect there to be a little bit of a struggle early on. Riley Leonard even said after the Texas A&M game, he's still getting in sync with the wide receivers, and that's going to take some time. I don't expect that to be all figured out by week 2. This is an experienced secondary. They're not going to beat themselves. And even though Notre Dame is the more talented team, they're the better coach team, they need to come out and be ready to play. And I'm just not sure that it's going to happen because, as I said, human nature is undefeated, and there's just no way this team can be up and ready to go in the same way that they were against Texas A&M. Now, if Notre Dame comes out and they dominate from the jump, I will be so happy to be wrong, and I will be so thoroughly impressed by the makeup of this group. It's not easy to bounce back after such a tough game, especially one on the road in that heat, and then stay locked in to go up against a MAC school at home. If they do, I will feel that much better about the rest of the season because even though I think Notre Dame is going to be favored in every game except maybe the USC game now, prior to last week, I said, well, yeah, they're going to be favored against USC, but the way that they looked against LSU and the fact that it's a home game, maybe USC ends up being favored by a small margin there. There are some tricky spots in Notre Dame's schedule where they could slip up if they don't come ready to play. I mean, Florida State, I'm ruling that out. They're horrible. Georgia Tech could be tricky, maybe even Miami of Ohio. Like, there are some potential trap games, but if Notre Dame comes out in this game and they dominate and they show, hey, they're going to prepare that hard and that intensely every single week, then it's a wrap. Like, Notre Dame is going to go undefeated and they might cruise to it, right? But that's not normally how things work because these are college kids that we were talking about. They're 18 to 22 years old. I guess now 24 years old, right? Because with the transfer portal and the eligibility, the COVID year of eligibility and all that, they're a little bit older, but still they're young. And I think this is a great opportunity for Marcus Freeman to show that he's got a full handle on his team and he has learned from those past mistakes. They were not ready to play against Stanford in his first year. They were not ready to play against Marshall. Those are weak teams. Now, he figured that out in year 2, but this is a new test for him, and it's an opportunity for him to show that, hey, no matter who the opponent is, he's going to have his team locked in and ready to go. I like how he mentioned in his Monday press conference that Jim Tressler called him about 10 minutes before it started and said, hey, remember, stay locked in because when everything seems all is well, it's really not. That's an illusion. I definitely butchered the exact phrase there by Jim Tressler, but I like that Jim Tressler is planting that seed in Marcus Freeman's head, and I hope that Marcus Freeman takes that to heart, preaches that to his team, and the players accept it because it might not mean much at all on the national stage, but this is an important game for Notre Dame. I really believe that, and Saturday is going to show a lot about how this team conducts itself in practice. I'm a little nervous. It might be a little ugly, but I'm really excited to watch the Irish run out of the tunnel in Notre Dame Stadium on Saturday. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm hopeful that this team does come out and dominate, and I would love to be wrong. And I know that if I am wrong, odds are you are going to enjoy telling me, and that's really the fun of this, right? I have a lot of fun doing this when I'm right, when I'm wrong, whatever, unless I'm wrong and then Notre Dame ends up losing. Then it's not nearly as fun. But that is going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Big show tomorrow. I already mentioned it. You're not going to want to miss it. Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated is going to make his return to talk about his impressions from week 1, how the Irish can avoid a letdown on Saturday, and what lies ahead for the rest of the season. Tim is one of my favorite guests. It has been a while since he's been on the show, so I'm looking forward to that. The best way to make sure that you don't miss tomorrow's episode, or really any other episode for that matter, is to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. Also, remember, get those mailbag questions in, doing a Friday mailbag every single Friday the rest of the season, starting last Friday, but I'm going to have another one ready this Friday. Drop in the YouTube comments, send them in on social media. Also, for your second listen, check out the Locked On College Football Podcast with Spencer McLaughlin, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.